Today there was a mass shooting here in Prague, and those that have followed this channel and have kept up with my academic research would know that for the last half decade or so, I've researched mass shootings, and I've written on cases in Central and Eastern Europe, on cases in the United States, and my recent book, which you see just up there, put forward the first data on mass shootings in Central and Eastern Europe. And this short video, I want to address several scholarly points that you may find to be interesting. So today, December 21st, you had a 24-year-old offender enter the Faculty of Arts at Charles University in Prague 1, so basically the most central part of the city. And as of now, it appears that 15 people were killed and 24 or more were injured. The shooter apparently was a former student, and he had a number of motivations which I think are still being discussed. He used a long rifle with a scope. It's clear that he probably planned the action, and let's just get into several tendencies that we can observe in the general context of what mass shootings are. So mass shootings are a rare form of homicide, and those that have paid attention to the news in the last decade or so would know that the U.S. is by far the most frequently observed context, but there have been cases in Central and Eastern Europe. My data identified 76 of such cases. In the Czech Republic, this is the fourth mass shooting in the country's history. So the country is quite new, so those that are unaware, it used to be Czechoslovakia. Then in the early 1990s there was a dissolution, a peaceful dissolution, and the Czech Republic became an independent state. The population is just over 10.5 million here, and there are, according to the Small Arms Survey data from 2018, there's about 1.3 million guns in the Czech Republic. So where does that put the Czech Republic in a comparative sense? Well, from the same data, the civilian-held firearms per 100 residents measures the Czech Republic at 12.53. So there are not that many guns here per capita. To put things into perspective, the U.S. has 10 times more guns than the Czech Republic. Importantly, guns aren't they're not causally attributable to mass shootings, but they are causally related to other forms of violent crime. But I'll say more on that in a different video. So the shooting today is the fourth in Czech history. So what does this mean in the comparative scheme of things? Well, back in Uherský Brod in 1998, there was a shooting in a cafe where a person was very angry, I believe, and he took out his anger on civilians in the local village's cafe. More recently, in 2019, in Ostrava, which is a industrial city in the far east of the Czech Republic, closer to the border of Poland, you had a offender shoot up a hospital, which was a hospital rampage. And the third case was in a street shooting in Prague, where an offender killed several people. So the incident today is by far the most severe, and it's also the most typical with relation to U.S. mass shootings. So we have a young person who obviously prepared for the action. He knew where he was going, and he also used high-powered weaponry. Anytime that there's a scope or a long rifle involved, we would assume that the offender wasn't just kind of psychotically going and trying to take several lives, but it seems like there was a strategy at play here. We don't know whether or not the offender had any mental illness. We also don't know anything about his ideological motivation or about his previous strains in life. But at this point in time, I think there were probably at least two of these factors present. And just give me a second here. Currently, so this is just several hours after the incident, police don't know if there was an accomplice to the offender, and they also don't know if a previous case of murder, which happened, I believe, 3 days ago on the outskirts of Prague, there was a father walking a baby, and both were killed. So there's also a lack of clarity as to whether or not this offender had done that, which would not be too untypical in the comparative sense. Now, just the final set of points I want to raise here pertaining to guns and regulations. So I mentioned that the Czech Republic is not too far away from the, let's say, the European average in terms of how it regulates guns. This country has had a very rich hunting culture, and it dates back to even, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and hunting has always been prevalent, but obviously it's still quite a niche sport hobby. So basically, in all EU countries, it's generally more difficult to acquire a gun legally than it is to get a driver's license and have a car. For example, in the Czech Republic, you need a permit, you need a medical check, a background check, a practical examination, a written examination, and there's a validity to the permit you get to get a gun of 5 to 10 years. So this is generally what you would see if you look around the European Union in countries like Estonia, Hungary, Poland. There's variation to some of these requirements, but the overarching tendency is that there's heavy regulation on guns, so it's pretty difficult to acquire them. With that being said, I think since it's so early, just literally a few hours since the incident, we don't know whether or not the offender had acquired the gun legally. We don't know if he stole it from his family or his parents. We also don't know if the offender had acquired the gun illegally. All those factors, I think, will be revealed in the post-forensic analyses that law enforcement do. And lastly, we know from comparative data on the U.S. and Central and Eastern Europe that there are around half of all offenders take their own lives or get killed by authorities at the scene of crime. Today, it seems like the offender had suicidal thoughts from his writings prior to the act, and it seems like he wanted a showdown with the police. And I just want to say the last word here on wishing all the families and people affected by this. Just want to say prayers to them. So thank you for your attention.